right, well, here's the deal. The mortgage crisis is over. No one told you that? It's true. The solution has been found. You're not hearing about it, but it all happened today. Not with some large government bailout or government announcement of any sort. Actually, not with the government at all, but with a lender. Countrywide Financial telling more than 80,000 customers that help is on the way, that it is open to renegotiating their mortgages, about $16 billion worth of mortgages. A lot of them granted to folks who probably shouldn't have gotten them in the first place, but are now looking at post-teaser rate sticker shock. Some will get their loans refinanced, others their terms extended, others maybe both. Bottom line, Countrywide is trying to solve the problem, not the government. As it should be. No one wins when people are thrown out of their homes, but no one wins when our tax dollars pay for keeping them in their homes. You're essentially rewarding the guy who didn't pay his bills over his neighbor who did, and with the neighbor's tax dollars to boot. Not fair, not right, not wise, and definitely not Barney Frank. The Massachusetts Democrat wants to allow burned homeowners to sue Wall Street firms behind those mortgages provided to borrowers who really never had a realistic chance of repaying. Can you imagine that? I'm suing because I'm an idiot. And Barney Frank says it's okay because I'm an idiot. But maybe Barney did some good. Talk of his stupid bill probably got Countrywide, and now I suspect others doing something on their own. It is high time lenders stepped up, and it is high time politicians shut up. Well, that's the real deal, and if I'm right, today might have marked the real turning point in this housing mess. To John Rutledge of Rutledge Capital on whether this non-government solution is the answer, and Peter Schiff, author of Crash Proof, How to Profit from the Upcoming Economic Collapse on the very same issue. John, what about this? Let the lender try to do this sort of thing, not the government.
I think it's a great idea. You know, Neil, the value of mortgages does not depend on just next year's payments. It's the whole stream of payments over the 5, 10, 20, or 30 years. There's a lot of flexibility in changing the shape of that payment stream over time to make the borrower able to keep his house and own a home, and to make the mortgage lender whole. We have to remember that as an officer of a company or a director of a company, you have a fiduciary duty to the shareholders and creditors not to just give the assets away, but this is really just restructuring the assets so they have value and the homeowners can benefit. This is a win-win both ways.
All right. Now, the difference here, Peter, it's the lender doing it, not the government doing it. Should that be seen as an encouraging development?
Well, sure, this is the only way to deal with it. The government needs to stay out of it. They helped create the problem. They're certainly not part of the solution. You're going to see more and more lenders having to renegotiate the terms, but this is just the beginning. This is a Band-Aid. You know, this is not going to solve the problem. Most of the people who borrowed money, these subprime borrowers, there's no way they can afford these mortgages, even if they get better terms. They overpaid for their houses in the first place. The mortgages are much too big relative to the value of these houses. And even if Countrywide buys some time, ultimately, it might be better off to take their medicine now and foreclose instead of waiting a couple of years and then foreclosing when the real estate is worth even less.
Do you think, John Rutledge, that Countrywide acted before it was forced to do something else, or before the government was going to get involved, and that maybe the government was kind of nudging them to do this on their own, saying, if you don't, we will?
Well, if I were on the board of Countrywide, I would be worried about some jerk in Washington whose name is Barney getting a big idea about trying to come in and mess around with my company. So I'd be trying to help where I can. But you have to remember, they can only help where it doesn't impair the value of the shareholders and the creditors. Those are legally binding contracts that people signed on both sides. But I do think, as Peter said, there's a lot of room to improve the situation with private deals. We have to also remember another thing. The houses that were built with the money for construction loans are still there. The only issue is what the price is going to shake out to be. I think everybody thinks it's going to be a little lower than now. I don't think it's the end of the world. We've been through this about every 10 years for the last 40 years. This is just one more.
We've never been through anything quite this big. We've never had this big a national real estate bubble. We've never borrowed so much money for the rest of the world to consume based on the belief that we were living in million-dollar homes, that in reality...
But, Peter, when all is said and done...
I don't think that's true.
Well, wait a minute, Peter. When all is said and done about the subprime mess, whatever you want to call it, certainly not a meltdown in my eyes, the fact of the matter is 96% of mortgages in this country, 96%, are being paid on time, month in and month out.
It's just getting started. You've got to give it time.
Honor the math here. If it's 96%, let's say it gets down to 90%, all right? Even allowing for your crepe hanging. The fact of the matter is, we have 9 out of 10 people plus who are dutifully paying off their mortgages. Do you think the media overstates things to call it an outright meltdown?
No, if anything, they're sugarcoating it. Look, what's going to happen, Neil, over the next few years?
Steve, are you reading the same publications, or Peter, I'm sorry, reading the same publications I am, where they're making it sound like Armageddon?
No, it is Armageddon. They're not making it sound as bad as it is. Let me tell you what's going to happen. Over the next several years, it's not just subprime mortgages, but all these arms are going to reset. And people who have been struggling to make their payments and are making them now under the belief that they have home equity, when they realize that their mortgage is greater than the value of their home and their adjustable rate mortgage resets, they're not going to make their payments.
You don't think they realize that now?
No. Let's take a look
Neil,
at the
they don't
interest
realize
rate.
that.
All right, John, go ahead.
The 10-year bond is 4.5% or a little bit more. These are not going to reset to the stratosphere. And the other thing is, you have to remember 1990, 91, 92. During Father Bush's term, we had 4 years in a row of falling land prices for the entire country. This is not the worst thing we've ever been through.
Two key points. Number one, when these loans reset, they're still going to reset to levels that are much, much higher than the teaser rates. People can't afford them. And you're looking at where the 10-year is now. A year or two, it could be twice that high. I mean, we're relying on the Chinese and the Saudis and the Japanese.
But you're assuming, built into that assumption, is that everyone has a teaser rate that will hit a magic button and a point at the same time, when in fact that's not the case. These low super teaser rates are roughly 5% of those outstanding subprime mortgages.
Neil, you go to the markets like California, where ARMs were 70, 80% of the mortgages taken out over the last few years. These people who have these ARMs are not going to be able to afford the resets, and even if they can, the only way they can make those payments is by stopping all their other spending. They're going to have to cut back.
Excuse me, I actually have one of those mortgages in California. I'm holding an ARM. I can probably do okay, and maybe some others can too. But, you know, Peter's talking about everything going wrong in the world at the same time. It's very unlikely the world is going to end next year or even 3 years from now. This is something we can work our way through.
All right.
I'm not talking about the world ending. It's America that's having a problem,
no, he's actually,
not the rest of the
you're
world.
just talking about Rutledge.
Only
His
America
world will
end.
All right, John and Peter, I want to thank you both. John, I'm surprised. I thought you paid cash for all your homes, but that was good to know. Good update. Thank you, guys.
I like the deduction.
All right, thanks, guys, very much. Well, speaking of things California...